On behalf of Pereaux Baptist Church, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome all who are watching online this morning. We are coming to the end of our summer, and we trust that you've had a good one. And we're glad that you're joining us today, and welcome everyone here this morning who is here present in our worship service today. That God blesses you. Amen. Our second reading is taken from Esther, chapter 4, verses 1 to 16. And just to put it in perspective, what we have now is Esther has been made queen, but also we know that there is a noble who's pretty upset with the Jews and wants to destroy them. And so Mordecai, Esther's cousin, speaks. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and to explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's officials and the people of the royal province know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king." When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I will perish. This is the second message in Extraordinary Heroes, Ordinary People. Hero, as defined last week, is a person who is admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. The word hero derives from the ancient Greek word peros, which held a meaning related to protecting people. And these ancient roots still matter today, although really the definition has changed and evolved in modern times. These ancient roots, when we look at them, are very unique. But what is a true hero? A hero's actions, by definition, go beyond what most people would do. Ancient literature called people with supernatural abilities heroes because they were born of both God and human. Scholars or heroes had great strength, like Hercules, or protection from wounds, like Achilles. However, scholars note that these ancient heroic stories featured men who wanted glory. People or societies might have sometimes benefited from their heroic deeds, but that was not what motivated ancient heroes. The modern traits of heroes must act for the purpose of helping others. It may happen in a moment of crisis, such as when Lenny Stutnik famously jumped into the icy waters of the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., when that aircraft crashed and people were in the water, and he jumped in and saved a woman who was certain to drown, if not rescued. The strong desire to save a life motivated the hero to swim out to her. Not everyone on the shore jumped in the water, but Lenny did. Another type of modern hero accepts ongoing sacrifices and risks the pursuit of a positive goal. And of course, we would remember the suffragette movement, both in Canada and in the U.S. And Alice Paul, an American woman, endured physical attacks and harassment while picketing the White House alongside her allies. She went to prison. And in prison, she organized a hunger strike to continue to promote voting rights for women despite losing her freedom and suffering abuse. In 1944, Nelson Mandela, a lawyer, joined the African National Congress, the oldest black political organization in South Africa, and he was advocating non-violence resistance to apartheid. South Africa's institutionalized system of white supremacy and racial segregation. However, after the massacre of a peaceful black demonstration at Sharpeville in 1960, everything changed. In 1961, he was arrested for treason, and although he was acquitted, he was arrested again in 1962. And was sentenced to 5 years in Robben Island prison. He was put on trial again in 1964 on charges of sabotage. And in 1964, he was convicted along with several other ANC leaders and sentenced to life in prison. Mandela spent the first 18 of his 27 years in jail at the brutal Robben Island prison. Confined to a small cell without a bed or plumbing, he was forced to do hard labor in the quarry, and he could write and receive a letter once every 6 months, and once a year he was allowed to meet with a visitor for 30 minutes. However, Mandela's resolve remained unbroken, and while remaining the symbolic leader of the anti-apartheid movement, And in 1989, F.W. de Klerk became South Africa's president and set about dismantling apartheid. De Klerk lifted the ban on the ANC, suspended executions, and in February 1990 ordered the release of Nelson Mandela. Mandela went on to be the leader of the country and served till 1999. The book of Esther opens with a king having a 180-day party and then a 7-day orgy of drinking unbelievably. In the course of that event, the king summons the queen in order to parade her in front of everyone, and she refuses. The result is she is removed as queen and another is chosen in her place. We learn of a man named Mordecai who has adopted and raised his cousin Hadassah, aka Esther. Esther is beautiful and somehow is one of the women chosen to undergo a 12-month makeover and learning the protocol of what a king must do before a king. In the meantime, Mordecai unearths a plot by two of the king's bodyguards who are angry with the king and want to assassinate him. Mordecai informs the authorities and the two men are disposed of. In walks Haman, one of the nobles, and he is credited with saving the king's life and reaches new levels of prominence, and Mordecai is totally forgotten. However, what really upsets Haman is that when he walks by Mordecai, he won't even bow to him. Haman hates him with a passion that is all-consuming. As a result, Haman decides to launch a plot not only to have Mordecai killed, but so heinous and wicked is this attitude toward Mordecai that he wants to destroy every single Jew. He manages to convince the king that the Jews lack loyalty to him, and they need to be annihilated. And he convinces the king to sign an edict to put that into law. Have you ever felt like life is unfair? Or have you ever felt that life has no purpose, especially after you spend your life doing something and life still seems to lack something? I wonder how Mordecai must have felt as a Jew who was in exile, who had spent many years in many ways outside of his country, outside of experiencing the full meaning of what it was to be a Jew, and to be faced with the disappointments that he had. I don't know about you, but I'm sure that you've experienced, I know I felt those kind of disappointments and really kind of wonder sometimes, what is the next thing, or what is the purpose for my life? And maybe you have felt that same way, how unfair life can be. And you may be wondering, what is the purpose of it all? Esther is now married to this wicked, selfish Persian king, and is the queen. And Mordecai performed a great act of heroism, and nothing is done. And the whole thing seems purposeless. Maybe life is just absurd and meaningless after all. Mordecai's rebuke or advice to Esther, and who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. I don't think for a moment that our lives are just a scattered bit of luck and fate. I believe that God is working in our lives long before we were even born to bring about the situations and circumstances and opportunities that he can use us. Mordecai is simply letting Esther know that despite being a woman in a male-dominated world, she has been placed in a prominent position by God. Mordecai was reminding Esther that she had been chosen by God, and to set her own interest aside, let go of her own ambitions, and face an enemy full on. She was to risk her life and her legacy with no guarantees of positive outcomes. That's that for such a time as this. Esther, you see, was challenged to accept. And her reply was, if I perish, I will perish. It is God, you see, who gives us opportunities to work, positions, resources, education, and so much more, especially in North America. It is God who's literally opened up opportunities for us to optimize for his kingdom purposes. He has placed you and me where we are because we are literally, I believe, in the midst of a battle, a war. We are in the midst of, I believe, a seismic conflict involving good versus evil. And to miss your kingdom assignment because life is hard or unfair or seems purposeless is to miss out on what God is wanting to teach us, to teach you, on what he wants to do through each one of us. An entire nation was grateful for how Esther responded to Mordecai. Their lives were spared. So the question is, how many lives can be spared in the culture where we live today when we choose to step up, when we choose to serve, even if it involves sacrifice? Every now and then we find ourselves in a moment in time that we might call a pivotal point. In sports, they call it a time for a big play. The time when the game is on the line. And in the military, it's called D-Day. The battle that will win or lose the war. In business, it's the sale that will put you over the top and into the black for the physical year. And when I think of what's happening in our culture right now, I believe that we are at a strategic moment in time, and you and I are here with the opportunity of a lifetime. God has placed each of us where we are, not to enjoy just the benefits of life in North America, but to build his kingdom, to help his people to fulfill his purposes. You see, God created you and me for divine appointment, a unique role to fulfill in life. Just like Esther and Mordecai, two ordinary people in a foreign country. Who would have thought? There is something that you can do for God that no one else can do. A God-given niche only you can fulfill. And I don't know what you think of when I say the words key player in God's plan. But I hope that you'll start to think of the man and woman in the mirror. Of all the millions of children, you are one of God's, and he has positioned you to rescue people around you. And like the Jewish girl placed in a strategic spot, you and I have been placed where we are for such a time as this. And hero really represents someone who rises to the occasion, like women in the suffragette movement, like Nelson Mandela, who came from a village far away from the city. Disregard for personal safety, he spent over 27 years in prison. Wants to benefit others, and does not accept being helpless. And I don't think we're going to find just one answer to the question, what makes someone a hero? But here are quickly just some of the ones that I came across. Heroes draw strength from believing that their ideas have merit. I believe God's kingdom has merit. Courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the willingness to overcome fear and try anyway. Great capacity for empathy, caring about other people. Humility, showing you care more about others than yourself. Conviction, that we have something important to say and something to do. Honesty, heroes see situations for what they are, and they do not lie to themselves or others about what is going on. They do not shrug slavery because it's legal. They do not accept women who won't vote because that's what society believes. Strength. They act heroically. And it's not just about physical strength. It's about the inner strength within a person, the emotional strength, no matter what. Nurturing. To put effort into helping someone else live and thrive. We've already seen examples of that as people come alongside of the Ukrainian people. And finally, resilience. No matter who we are, to be resilient with the convictions that we have. And finally, the gift of inspiration. Heroes show us how to take care of each other, whether through a one-time act of bravery or a lifetime of fighting for the greater good. And when life tests us, the good examples set by heroes set the standard for how we will respond. They give us a little bit more courage, a little bit more conviction, a little bit more willingness to sacrifice. And even if we fail, heroes often do, heroes show us that the struggle was worth the sacrifice. No one looks up to people who never tried to make things better. No one will ever remember them. And although the modern hero embraces humility, the ancient notion of glory remains intact. And it isn't really all about this life at the end. But one day we will stand before a Creator, and He will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And the glory comes from leading others to the high road, even when the journey was difficult. That is our mission. That is our purpose. Until the day we die. God bless. Father, thank you for people like Esther and Mordecai who remind us what it is to be a hero, and that the capacity is in each one of us as they give examples, and especially of other people throughout history who have shown us what it is to stand up. In Jesus' name, amen. Our hymn is number 569.
Bring it
As we leave this place today, I pray that God will give you both strength and courage as you step out into your world, into your week, and into your day. And know that God can do far more immeasurably than we could ever ask or think. Amen.
Yeah.